fellow seekers of the untamed fire. Today we storm the heavens, not the skies of modern maps, but the raw, pulsating vaults of ancient myth, where gods bleed, nurture, rule, and illuminate. The heaven that made Plato tremble, wrestling with a universe too wild for his pure forms. Hesiod grinning darkly as he pens a castration that births beauty. Homer slyly turning a titan into a ceiling. Orphic initiates chanting to a sky reborn. Egyptian priests tracing stars on a goddess's skin. Mesopotamian scribes etching a throne no one sits on. Zoroaster gazing into dawn's light to find wisdom itself. And Vedic poets pleading with a judge who binds the universe in silence. We will explore everything, but keep in mind that these are not easy stories. They are the psyche's seismic fractures and bondings, the magnificent archetypes, the echoes of a truth too vast, too volatile for our timid age to apprehend. But such apprehension is irrelevant to their factuality, their existence, their influence over millennia and countless societies that have passed and will follow. Welcome to Irevelato, where the veil is torn and the secrets you deserve to know are offered on a silver platter. I am your torchbearer, diving fearlessly into the texts that forged consciousness. Plato's dialogues, Hesiod's theogony, Homer's Iliad, Orphic hymns, Egyptian scrolls, Mesopotamian tablets, Avestan chants, and the Rig Veda. I present to you these texts because they have been treated too long as dusty relics under the weight of modernity, because they are living currents and vibrations meant to rewire your soul. At Irevelato, we confront luminaries and gods, Plato's anxious brilliance, Nietzsche's hammer, Jung's depth, and the deities who shaped our skies, Ouranos, Nut, Anu, Ahura Mazda, Varuna. It is impossible for me to assure you that this is a gentle tour, because it is in fact a rebellion against a world too scared to face its own shadows, too distracted to claim its birthright. Either way, I invite you to take a seat and follow me. In this odyssey, we'll chase the heavens through their many masks. From Ouranos' bloody fall to Nut's starry embrace, from Anu's empty crown to Ahura Mazda's radiant wisdom, to Varuna's unyielding gaze. We'll map a cosmos that shifts from flesh to principle, violence to order, chaos to clarity. Each section is a detonation, building on the last, spanning millennia and cultures. We'll wield Plato's Cratylus and Republic, Hesiod's primal gore, Homer's sly erasure, Orphic mysticism, Egyptian hymns, Babylonian epics, Zoroastrian gathas and Vedic pleas, every quote exact, every insight an ignition. This is philosophy with a hammer, theology that pulses with blood, a dare to see the sky not as a void, but as a mirror of your deepest struggles. Why now? Because you're drowning in a sea of noise, screens flickering, lies fragmenting, a culture sedating you with banality. But you feel it, don't you? That ache for something whole, something true. The heavens have whispered to humanity since we first looked up, and their voices still echo within you. Ouranos' groan, Nut's lullaby, Anu's decree, Ahura Mazda's light, Varuna's verdict. Irevelato is your lifeline, stripping away the veils to reveal the cosmic intermix of power, creation, and conscience. This is not for the faint-hearted. It's a storm that will overwhelm you, paradoxes that will claw at your certainties until they crack. If you seek comfort, turn back. If you crave truth, step into the abyss with me. I already know the way. This is your call to arms. Subscribe to join our tribe of fearless seekers. Activate the notifications to catch every revelation. Share this fire with those ready to break their chains. And please dare to share your comments, because they are fuel for our collective awakening. Together, we're not just unearthing the past. We're igniting the future of consciousness, one soul at a time, one moment at a time. And some moments later, you'll discover that we are millions or even billions. You're here for a reason. Descendants of Plato, Nietzsche, Jung, and gods unnamed. See it, claim it, master it. The wisdom of the skies is yours to seize, and no one can take it from you. Brace yourself. Irevelato is no guide. It's a dare to kiss the infinite, to wrestle the unknown until it yields. The heavens await, and they will not wait forever. Let's begin. Plato was always torn between his love of intellectual exploration and his terror of where such exploration might lead the impressionable. In the Cratylus, he offers us a charmingly sanitized etymology of Ouranos. Uranus, rightly so called apotou oranta ano, from looking upwards, which, as philosophers tell us, is the way to have a pure mind, and the name Uranus is therefore correct, writes Plato in Cratylus. How convenient that the sky god's name should connote philosophical contemplation, rather than, say, the lusty primordial being who would soon find himself on the wrong end of a cosmic vasectomy. This dialogue madly speculates on etymologies, and madly is precisely the right word, as Plato performs remarkable intellectual gymnastics to align the gods' names with his philosophical agenda. One can almost picture Plato at his writing desk, quill in hand, a bead of sweat forming on his brow as he attempts to transform the unruly pantheon into respectable pedagogical tools. Looking upward leads to a pure mind, he insists, while carefully avoiding any mention that this particular sky was looking downward quite lustily at his mother-wife. When forced to confront Hesiod's explicit account in the Republic, Plato's philosophical composure cracks entirely. First of all, I said, there was that greatest of all lies in high places which the poet told about Uranus, and which was a bad lie too. I mean what Hesiod says that Uranus did, and how Cronus retaliated on him. The doings of Cronus, and the sufferings which in turn his son inflicted upon him, even if they were true, ought certainly not to be lightly told to young and thoughtless persons. If possible, they had better be buried in silence. Even if they were true, what a delicious phrase. Plato, the master of philosophical certainty, the father of noble lies, suddenly finds himself in the uncomfortable position of neither being able to confirm nor deny divine castration. His solution, an elaborate system of censorship wrapped in philosophical justification. But if there is an absolute necessity for their mention, a chosen few might hear them in a mystery, and they should sacrifice not a common Eleusinian pig, but some huge and unprocurable victim. And then the number of the hearers will be very few indeed. Here lies Plato's exquisite solution, demanding an unprocurable victim. Is rather like a modern parent telling a child they can have a pony when pigs fly. It's not an outright no, but the conditions ensure the outcome is the same. One imagines Plato with a satisfied smirk as he concocts this rhetorical trapdoor, a philosopher's version of when hell freezes over. However, his concerns about these stories are closely tied to his political project. Those stories are extremely objectionable. They are stories not to be repeated in our state. The young man should not be told that in committing the worst of crimes, he is far from doing anything outrageous, and that even if he chastises his father when he does wrong, in whatever manner, he will only be following the example of the first and greatest among the gods. The poor man must have had night terrors imagining Athens overtaken by divine-sanctioned patricide. One wonders if he lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, tortured by visions of young guardians brandishing sickles against their fathers, all shouting, "Kronos did it first." Plato's fear extends beyond specific acts to the entire concept of divine conflict. Neither, if we mean our future guardians to regard the habit of quarrelling among themselves as of all things the basest, should any word be said to them of the wars in heaven, and of the plots and fightings of the gods against one another, for they are not true. They are not true. A fascinating claim from the man who elsewhere argues that poetry is thrice removed from truth as a mere imitation of appearances. Here Plato doesn't philosophically dismiss myths as false representations. He outright declares their falsity with the certainty of an eyewitness. One might ask, were you there, Plato? Did you witness the original sky-earth relations to contradict Hesiod so confidently? His concern about allegorical interpretation is particularly telling. For a young person cannot judge what is allegorical and what is literal. Anything that he receives into his mind at that age is likely to become indelible and unalterable. And therefore it is most important that the tales which the young first hear should be models of virtuous thoughts. The irony here is exquisite. Plato, who built his entire philosophical system around allegorical devices like the cave and the divided line, suddenly becomes skeptical of allegorical interpretation when it might redeem the myths he finds so distasteful. The philosopher who asks us to see beyond appearances to true forms can't trust youth to see beyond literal castration to deeper meanings. Plato's elaborate restrictions, mystery cults, impossible sacrifices, chosen circles of initiates, reveal his profound ambivalence. He knows these stories hold power he cannot fully dismiss, yet fears that power like one might fear a lightning bolt from Zeus himself. His solution? Create such an elaborate labyrinth of prerequisites that accessing these stories becomes practically impossible without abandoning them entirely. The great paradox is that Plato himself was clearly shaped by these very myths he wished to restrict. His entire philosophical project can be read as a response to and transformation of the mythological tradition he inherited. Without Hesiod's troubling heaven, would Plato's upward-looking Ouranos ever have been conceived? History delivers its verdict with a certain delicious irony. While Plato's Republic remains unrealized, Hesiod's tales of divine castration, cosmic birth, and generational conflict continue to captivate imaginations and inspire creative works millennia later. Perhaps the unprocurable victim Plato demanded was, in the end, the death of these myths themselves, a sacrifice the fates themselves refused to grant him. So we find ourselves in a curious position, indebted to Plato for his philosophical brilliance while gently chuckling at his sensorial anxieties. The philosopher who urged us to leave the cave and face reality couldn't quite face the raw mythic reality of Ouranos. Perhaps that's the greatest irony of all, that heaven itself made Plato avert his philosophical gaze. Isn't it curious how the most profound truths often begin with the most disturbing stories? Hesiod's theogony introduces us to Ouranos, now called heaven, and yes, the personification of heaven itself. One would think he is like a serene blue expanse, an oasis of light and truth with exuberant and luxurious gardens. But in the Hesiodic mind, Ouranos is as dramatic as the other gods. He has appetites, cruelties, and ultimately vulnerabilities that make him all too human. In Works and Days, Hesiod warns that, "When you come upon a burning sacrifice, do not make a mock of mysteries, for heaven is angry at this also." Then, in another work, Hesiod writes, "Heaven has an avenging eye, and surely the host of mice will punish you and not let you escape." No wonder Plato found himself so troubled by these tales. Hesiod doesn't waste time on pleasantries. From the very start of the theogony, we're thrown into a cosmogonic tangle that would make even today's therapists reach for their notepads. And earth first bare starry heaven, equal to herself, to cover her on every side, and to be an ever-sure abiding place for the blessed gods. And she brought forth long hills, graceful haunts of the goddess nymphs, who dwell amongst the glens of the hills. She bare also the fruitless deep with his raging swell Pontus, without sweet union of love. But afterwards she lay with heaven and bare deep swirling Oceanus, Coos and Creus and Hyperion and Iapetus, Thea and Rhea, Themis and Mnemosyne and gold-crowned Phoebe and lovely Tethys. After them was born Cronos, the wily, youngest and most terrible of her children, and he hated his lusty sire. Did you catch that? Earth gives birth to heaven, making him her son, and then proceeds to lay with heaven to produce the Titans. One can almost see Plato pacing anxiously in his academy, wondering how to reconcile this primordial, Oedipal scenario with his vision of heaven as representing philosophical ascent. Looking upward takes on quite a different meaning when you consider that Ouranos is essentially gazing at his mother while embracing her. The divine family dynamic only grows more troubled as the narrative progresses. Hesiod reveals Ouranos as the original abusive patriarch rather than a benevolent skyfather. And again, she, Gaia, bare the Cyclopes, overbearing in spirit, Brontes and Steropes and stubborn-hearted Arges, who gave Zeus the thunder and made the thunderbolt. In all else they were like the gods, but one eye only was set in the midst of their foreheads, and they were surnamed Cyclopes, orb-eyed, because one orbed eye was set in their foreheads. Strength and might and craft were in their works, and again 3 other sons were born of earth and heaven, great and doughty beyond telling, Cottus and Broireos and Gaius, presumptuous children. From their shoulders sprang 100 arms, not to be approached, and each had 50 heads upon his shoulders on their strong limbs, and irresistible was the stubborn strength that was in their great forms. For of all the children that were born of earth and heaven, these were the most terrible, and they were hated by their own father from the first. And he used to hide them all away in a secret place of earth so soon as each was born, and would not suffer them to come up into the light, and heaven rejoiced in his evil doing. What exquisite darkness in that final line! Ouranos imprisons his monstrous offspring, and he literally rejoices in his evil doing. The starry vault of heaven, which Plato would have us contemplate for philosophical enlightenment, turns out to harbour sadistic pleasure in cruelty. No wonder Plato preferred his sanitized etymological interpretation in the Cratylus, connecting Ouranos to looking upward and pure mind. The gap between these two visions of heaven could hardly be wider. Then comes the passage that made Plato reach for his red pen, the moment that would launch 1,000 psychoanalytic theories millennia later. The castration of Ouranos stands as perhaps the most visceral scene in all of Greek cosmogony. But vast earth groaned within, being straitened, and she thought a crafty and an evil wile. Forthwith she made the element of grey flint and shaped a great sickle, and told her plan to her dear sons. And she spoke, cheering them, while she was vexed in her dear heart. My children, gotten of a sinful father, if you will obey me, we should punish the vile outrage of your father, for he first thought of doing shameful things. So she said, but fear seized them all, and none of them uttered a word. But great Cronos the wily took courage and answered his dear mother. Mother, I will undertake to do this deed, for I reverence not our father of evil name, for he first thought of doing shameful things. So he said, and vast earth rejoiced greatly in spirit, and set and hid him in an ambush, and put in his hands a jagged sickle, and revealed to him the whole plot. And heaven came, bringing on night and longing for love, and he lay about earth spreading himself full upon her. Then the sun from his ambush stretched forth his left hand, and in his right took the great long sickle with jagged teeth, and swiftly lopped off his own father's members, and cast them away to fall behind him. The imagery here is extremely intimate and violent. Ouranos approaches Earth, bringing on night and longing for love, a surprisingly tender portrayal of desire just moments before his mutilation. The ambush occurs during the most vulnerable of acts, with Cronos hidden beneath his mother's skirts, so to speak, waiting for the moment when his father is most exposed. It's a primal scene of generational violence that persisted through the entire mythic structure of Greek thought. Plato, with his philosophical project of directing souls toward rational contemplation of eternal forms, must have shuddered at the thought of young Athenians absorbing this tale. How could one contemplate the starry heavens with philosophical serenity after picturing this scene? How could patricide not seem somehow cosmically sanctioned? Yet what makes Greek myth so enduringly fascinating is not the violence itself, but how creative force emerges from destruction. Out of this brutal castration comes one of mythology's most sublime images, and not vainly did they fall from his hand. For all the bloody drops that gushed forth earth received, and as the seasons moved round she bare the strong Erinyes and the great giants with gleaming armour, holding long spears in their hands, and the nymphs whom they call Meliae, all over the boundless earth. And so soon as he had cut off the members with flint and cast them from the land into the surging sea, they were swept away over the main a long time, and a white foam spread around them from the immortal flesh, and in it there grew a maiden. First she drew near holy Cythera, and from there, afterwards, she came to sea-girt Cyprus, and came forth an awful and lovely goddess, and grass grew up about her beneath her shapely feet. Her gods and men call Aphrodite, and the foam-born goddess and rich-crowned Cytherea, because she grew amid the foam, and Cytherea, because she reached Cythera, and Cyprogenes, because she was born in billowy Cyprus, and Philomedes, because she sprang from the members. The goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite herself, now called Philomedes, emerges from dismembered divine genitals floating in sea foam. Could any image better capture the mysterious entanglement of violence and creativity, horror and beauty that characterizes Greek myth? Botticelli's serene birth of Venus barely references the visceral origins Hesiod describes. Beauty is not separate from violence in this worldview, but emerges directly from it. With exquisite mythic irony, the son who castrated his father for his cruelty becomes equally monstrous in his own way. But Rhea was subject in love to Kronos and bare splendid children, Hestia, Demeter, and gold-shod Hera, and strong Hades, pitiless in heart, who dwells under the earth, and the loud crashing earth-shaker, and wise Zeus, father of gods and men, by whose thunder the wide earth is shaken. These great Kronos swallowed, as each came forth from the womb to his mother's knees with this intent, that no other of the proud sons of heaven should hold the kingly office amongst the deathless gods. For he learned from earth and starry heaven that he was destined to be overcome by his own son, strong though he was, through the contriving of great Zeus. The revolutionary becomes the tyrant, a pattern as old as time itself and therefore as Kronos himself. Kronos, having witnessed the prophecy of his father's overthrow fulfilled by his own hand, attempts to outmaneuver fate by consuming his children. The imagery shifts from imprisonment inside Earth to imprisonment inside the divine body itself. Ouranos kept his children from seeing the light. Kronos ensures they never see anything at all. Zeus eventually breaks this cycle, at least partially, and he set free from their deadly bonds the brothers of his father, sons of heaven whom his father in his foolishness had bound. And they remembered to be grateful to him for his kindness, and gave him thunder and the glowing thunderbolt and lightning. For before that, huge earth had hidden these. In them he trusts and rules over mortals and immortals. Zeus liberates the imprisoned children of Ouranos, yet still overthrows his own father Kronos. Progress, perhaps, but not complete transformation. The pattern of generational conflict remains, though its manifestation evolves. In the ultimate mythic twist, Zeus himself employs a strategy eerily reminiscent of both his father and grandfather. Now Zeus, king of the gods, made Metis his wife first, and she was wisest among gods and mortal men. But when she was about to bring forth the goddess bright-eyed Athene, Zeus craftily deceived her with cunning words and put her in his own belly, as earth and starry heaven advised. Even Zeus, ostensibly the most just of divine rulers, swallows a pregnant female when faced with prophecies threatening his rule. The pattern spirals through the generations, changing form but maintaining its essence. Ouranos imprisoned his children in Gaia. Kronos swallowed his children whole. Zeus swallows not his child but his pregnant lover. Each generation becomes somewhat more subtle, yet the fundamental anxiety about succession and the willingness to commit violence to prevent it remains. Despite his violent end, Ouranos remains a benchmark of divinity throughout the theogony. His name appears repeatedly as a measure of excellence. Hail, children of Zeus! Grant lovely song and celebrate the holy race of the deathless gods, who are forever, those that were born of earth, and starry heaven and gloomy night, and them that briny sea did rear. And Leto was joined in love with Zeus, who holds the aegis, and bare Apollo and Artemis, delighting in arrows, children lovely above all the sons of heaven. But Hera, without union with Zeus, for she was very angry and quarrelled with her mate, bare famous Hephaestus, who is skilled in crafts more than all the sons of heaven, and tens of other references to heaven. The castrated god, the cruel father who rejoiced in his evil doing, somehow remains the standard against which divine excellence is measured. Apollo and Artemis are lovely above all the sons of heaven. Hephaestus is skilled in crafts more than all the sons of heaven. The shadow of Ouranos stretches across the entire pantheon, a silent presence even after his power has been literally cut away. Heaven doesn't fall completely. We find ourselves caught in this exquisite tension between Hesiod's raw, generative, morally ambiguous cosmos and Plato's yearning for philosophical purity. Hesiod gives us a universe where beauty emerges from violence, where divine power is both creative and destructive, where the lines between victim and perpetrator blur across generations. Plato, on the other hand, wants to direct our gaze upward towards a heaven of pure forms, unsullied by the messy particulars of embodied existence. Perhaps we need both visions. Plato was right that these stories hold power to change dramatically how we see the world. But was he right to fear them? History suggests otherwise. The myths he found so dangerous have been told and retold for millennia without bringing civilization to its knees. Rather than corrupting us, these morally complex narratives might actually prepare us for a reality that rarely divides neatly into good and evil. Perhaps in witnessing even the gods struggle with their shadow sides, we learn to acknowledge and integrate our own. The castration of Ouranos, the ancient tabloid scandal, turns out to be a primordial truth about power, generations, creativity, and change. No wonder Plato found it so disturbing. No wonder we still find it fascinating today. No wonder heaven is the grandfather of all of us. If Hesiod gave us Ouranos as a bleeding, castrated patriarch and a bloody family drama, while Plato nervously starts sanitizing everything and recasts Ouranos as more of a philosophical aspiration, Homer performs an altogether more audacious magic trick. He turns the divine progenitor into real estate. And like that, puff, Ouranos practically disappears. This time, Aphrodite was birthed by Zeus and Dione. In Homer's cosmic architecture, the once mighty Ouranos suffers neither castration nor sanitization, but something perhaps more humiliating: irrelevance. The former Skyfather becomes merely the sky, transformed from monstrous parent to convenient ceiling, from divine actor to celestial backdrop. It's the mythological equivalent of discovering your terrifying grandfather has been relegated to decorative wallpaper. Open the Iliad, expecting to find Ouranos brooding over his lost testicles, and you'll find yourself woefully disappointed, like Zeus at an abstinence convention. And we all know that Zeus is a madman and can't help himself even if he wanted to. Anyway, the name appears, certainly, Ouranos scattered across the verses, but with all the personality of an apartment lease. In Homeric conception, heaven is where gods loiter, not who made them. When Athena swoops down to prevent Achilles from skewering Agamemnon in Book 1, she arrives from heaven, or anothen, by white-armed here-hither sent. Heaven here is just the god's departure terminal, not a sentient being who might have opinions about his granddaughter's travel plans. One imagines the former cosmic patriarch fuming impotently as divine beings treat his dismembered body as a celestial LaGuardia. The smoke from sacrificial animals rises to high heaven, as if the sky were nothing but a collector of barbecue fumes. No consciousness receives these offerings. The phrase merely indicates direction, like the smoke went that way. Ouranos, who in Hesiod's account literally embraced Earth in cosmic copulation, has been demoted to a compass point. When Thetis seeks Zeus to plead for her son, we're told, "Up from the wave she sprang, and in the morning scaled the heights of heaven." Heaven is not someone to petition, but somewhere to climb. The primordial creator was reduced to a diving platform. She finds Zeus not communing with his cosmic grandfather, but on many-ridged Olympus's topmost peak, as if the universe's first father had been outbid on divine real estate by his upstart grandson. Warriors' battle cries, "Reach the welkin, the vault of heaven," as if the sky were just an acoustic ceiling testing the limits of Bronze Age acoustics. The gleam from their armor flashes through ether heavenwards, treating Ouranos like north but up. Cranes, with clamor, fill the sky, not the consciousness of a primordial deity, but just the empty air above, waiting to be filled like an undecorated apartment. When Agamemnon despairs, he wailed as he heavenwards gazed, "O Father Zeus, no god so harsh as thou." Heaven isn't the destination of his complaint, but merely where his complaint's actual recipient happens to be loitering. Zeus has the office, Ouranos is the office building. The spatial conception becomes almost comically explicit when Hera's chariot, not unwilling, flew midway between the earth and starry sky. Here, heaven isn't even a destination, just the upper boundary of a divine commute, your firmament. The gods travel between the earth and starry sky, like middle managers navigating between floors in a cosmic office tower. One wonders if Ouranos, once embracer of all creation, now suffers the indignity of having immortals pass through him like celestial subway passengers. What we are witnessing is an ontological revolution, packaged as poetic convenience. Hesiod's Ouranos was a being with urges and opinions who actively rejoiced in his evil doing. Homer's Ouranos is a place with stars and clouds that passively accepts divine traffic and reflects battlefield noise. It's as if the universe's first consciousness has been lobotomized and repurposed as a combination of skylight and acoustic paneling, acting like an umbrella. Consider the scales of Zeus. But when the sun, his round half-run, stood in the middle heaven, then did the sire hang forth the golden scales. Till on the fruitful earth, Achaea's fate sate low, the Trojans to wide heaven rose high. Heaven serves as nothing but the upper limit of divine measurement, the upside of a cosmic seesaw. The transformation reaches its sublime peak in Homer's astral imagery, and as in heaven around the shining moon, the stars gleam sharp and clear in windless calm, and all the peaks stand out, and jutting bluffs and glens, and boundless ether parted wide uncurtains all high heaven. Heaven becomes a night sky display, a planetarium show. The first father of gods is a cosmic IMAX screen, impressive to look at but entirely lacking in agency. Even when heaven seems to respond to events, it's rather poetic shorthand. When warriors clash, the crash and rattle, rose to heaven the noise of blows upon the shields. Heaven doesn't hear these sounds as a conscious entity might. It's just where noise goes when it runs out of earth to bounce off. Ouranos has been reduced to a cosmic echo chamber. The vertical ordering of the cosmos is laid bare in Zeus's famous threat. Or I myself will take and cast him down to murky Tartarus, far, far away, that lowest yawning pit beneath the ground, whose gates are iron, whose threshold brass, as deep from Hades down as heaven from earth is high. Heaven here is a measuring stick for cosmic distances, not a divine ancestor anyone remembers to honor on his birthday. Maybe that's why we have almost no imagery of Ouranos. I mean, who would paint a measuring stick? Hardly worthy of worship. This architectural reimagining culminates in the description of heaven's infrastructure. Then here swiftly touched with lash the steeds, self-moved before them groaned the gates of heaven kept by the hours, for to their charge is given Olympus and wide heaven. Heaven now has gates, hinges and divine maintenance staff. It's gone from creator to created, from subject to object. Imagine your grandfather being converted into a condominium, and you'll begin to grasp Ouranos' spectacular demotion. This is one of the most insane stories in ancient Greek culture, simply because the way Ouranos is painted is so different. The crowning irony is that Homer, without philosophical fanfare or moral panic, accomplishes what Plato could only dream of: the complete demythologization of Ouranos. Where Plato squirmed uncomfortably with etymological gymnastics to sanitize the sky god, Homer simply forwarded Ouranos' mail to a new address. Sky, not the god, just the big blue thing. No ethics committee review, no philosophical treatise, just a quiet ontological coup accomplished through poetic redirection. While Plato is panicking, Homer basically says, why should we even talk about it? And please, stop acting crazy because you'll draw their attention. Plato attempts to rebrand the troublesome deity through etymological sleight of hand, but Homer's approach is more radical still. Treat the former patriarch as cosmic architecture and wait for everyone to forget he was ever anything else. The delicious irony is that Homer's spatial reimagining, not Hesiod's bloody drama or Plato's philosophical sanitization, ultimately conquered Western imagination. Homer performs the ultimate removal of personhood and relevance from Ouranos. And it worked. Think about it. How many cults dedicated to Ouranos are out there now? How many were there any time after the Greeks? When modern humans gaze skyward, we see stars and planets, molecules and vacuum, a place, not a person, phenomena, not family. The ancient castrated god has faded from consciousness, but the sky remains eternally overhead. Ouranos lost his narrative but gained something perhaps more lasting, the infinite blue above, persisting long after his mythological trauma has become obscure academic footnote and cosmic geography. Heaven transformed from who to where, from ancestor to address. In the process, Homer made it possible to look upward without the discomfort of making eye contact with a castrated celestial grandfather. Plato would have saved himself considerable philosophical hand-wringing had he simply followed Homer's lead. Don't reinterpret the uncomfortable myth, just stop treating it as myth at all. In Homer's casual celestial repositioning, we find a profound cultural reframing. Heaven becomes place rather than person, container rather than contained, vastness rather than ancestor. It's the ultimate cosmic demotion, from first father to first floor, from divine progenitor to divine property. And somehow it happened with such subtle poetic ease that we barely noticed Ouranos had disappeared until it was too late to file a missing deity report. But maybe it would also be wise to consider, was Homer right in doing so? Are we looking at heaven and seeing nothing but its elements? Or is it a deus absconditus, hidden in plain sight? I think it's not absurd to think that what Homer dismissed may ultimately be a symptom of our ability to only observe the interior walls of the conscious mind. But what is outside of it? If Plato sanitized, Hesiod bloodied, and Homer demoted, the Orphics also wrote about Ouranos, one simultaneously more cosmic and more intimate. In the mysterious Orphic hymns attributed to the mythical poet Orpheus and used in secretive ritual contexts, heaven regained some of his divine personhood while transcending the bloody family drama that so troubled Plato. The Orphic hymn to heaven sky, or Ouranos, speaks with reverence that would have shocked both Homer and Plato. Great heaven, Ouranos, whose mighty frame no respite knows, father of all, from whom the world arose. Here, bounteous parent, source and end of all, forever whirling round this earthly ball, abode of gods, whose guardian power surrounds the eternal world with ever-during bounds, whose ample bosom and encircling folds the dire necessity of nature holds. Ethereal, earthly, whose all-various frame azure and full of forms, no power can tame. All-seeing heaven, progenitor of time, forever blessed, deities sublime, propitious on a novel mystic shine, and crown his wishes with a life divine. Gone is Hesiod's cruel patriarch, who rejoiced in his evil doing. Gone too is Homer's depersonalized sealing. Instead we find a divine being of cosmic proportions, simultaneously physical, forever whirling round this earthly ball, and metaphysical, source and end of all. Both container, abode of gods, and consciousness, all-seeing. The Orphic sky transcends Hesiod's genealogy. While he remains progenitor of time, Kronos, his essence expands beyond familial relationships into cosmic principles. The universe's structure and necessity reside within his ample bosom and encircling folds. A strikingly intimate image that repersonalizes the depersonalized Homeric sky. Even more surprising for those familiar with Hesiod's bloody tales, this sky receives direct religious devotion. The hymn addresses him as forever blessed deity sublime and asks him to be propitious to the initiate, crowning them with a life divine. Far from being the castrated former deity that must be sanitized or ignored, Ouranos becomes a direct recipient of prayer, frankincense, and ritual attention. The hymn to the Titans reinforces this connection while acknowledging their mythic heritage. O mighty Titans, who from heaven, Ouranos and earth Gaia, derive your noble and illustrious birth, our fathers' fires, in Tartarus profound who dwell, deep merged beneath the solid ground. The initiates acknowledge both the Titans' imprisonment, a nod to the traditional myth, while still honoring them as noble and illustrious, a far gentler treatment than Hesiod's visceral account. Most tellingly, in the Orphic tradition, sky is paired with night rather than earth in the cosmological sequence. The hymn to night immediately precedes the hymn to sky, positioning night as the primordial feminine principle and sky as the masculine counterpart. A subtly different cosmological vision than Hesiod's earth-sky pairing. The Orphic approach offers a third alternative to the Platonic and Homeric solutions to Hesiod's problematic sky. Where Plato sanitized through etymology and Homer demoted through depersonalization, the Orphics elevated through mystical transformation. This sky becomes simultaneously more physical, azure and full of forms, and more metaphysical, source and end of all. Most remarkably, sky in the Orphic hymns becomes a figure worthy of direct invocation, capable of bestowing a life divine on worshippers. This represents neither Platonic abstraction nor Homeric demotion, but rather mystical elevation, transforming the castrated deity of myth into a cosmic principle worthy of devotion. The placement of the hymn in the collection is itself significant. Sky appears early in the sequence, hymn number 3, right after night and before other cosmological forces like ether, protagonus, and the celestial bodies. This positioning suggests Sky's fundamental importance in the Orphic cosmology, despite his diminished role in Homer and problematic portrayal in Hesiod. What's notably absent from the Orphic hymn is any direct reference to the castration story. This silence is heavy, rather than either emphasizing the violent myth, as Hesiod does, or explicitly reinterpreting it, as Plato attempts. The Orphic approach simply transcends it through religious transformation. The bloody details fade into insignificance before Sky's cosmic importance. And isn't that the truth? The initiates who heard these hymns lived within a culture that knew Hesiod's bloody tales, but found in their ritual context a reframing that neither censored, as Plato would prefer, nor depersonalized, as Homer did. Instead, the ritual language transmuted the raw mythological material into spiritual gold, finding in Sky a divine presence that transcended his troubled mythological biography. In the introductory hymn to Musaeus, the collection acknowledges this comprehensive divine worldview, calling upon the earth, Gaia, and solar light, Helios, the moon's Mene, pure splendor, and the stars of night, along with a vast pantheon of divinities. This holistic approach sees divinity permeating every aspect of cosmos, Sky included, without being limited by the traumatic narratives of succession myths. In the end, the Orphic Sky remains the most mysterious of all. Neither the traumatized castration victim, nor the sanitized philosophical principle, nor the depersonalized cosmic architecture, but something combining elements of all three while transcending their limitations. A secret sky, accessible only to initiates, whose complete nature remains as elusive to us as it was deliberately obscured to the uninitiated in ancient times. The Egyptians envisioned heaven as a woman, Nut, a star-speckled nude goddess who arched over creation, swallowed the sun each evening and birthed it anew at dawn. Her stellar body formed both a celestial highway for divine traffic and an eternal destination for mortal souls. Egyptian funerary texts invoke her protection intimately. "O my mother Nut, stretch yourself over me, that I may be placed among the imperishable stars which are in you, and that I may not die." The Book of the Dead reinforces this. "I am Nut, and I have come so that I may enfold and protect you from all things evil." Unlike the Greeks who imagined violent cosmic separation, Egyptians saw divine bodies as thresholds between realms. The Book of the Cow of Heaven, inscribed in royal tombs beginning with Seti I around 1323 BC, describes not primordial castration but a cosmic restructuring. After quelling a human rebellion, the aged sun god Ra grows weary of earthly rule. Nun, one of the oldest gods, proposes an administrative solution. "O my daughter Nut, place him upon your back." When Nut asks how, she undergoes transformation, and so Nut became a cow. Then the majesty of Re placed himself on her back. Talk about career flexibility. Most gods demand blood sacrifices or temple upgrades. Nut simply gets a cosmic promotion through species reassignment. This accomplishes what Greek myths couldn't: peaceful separation of cosmic realms through willing divine restructuring. Ra instructs, "Stay far away from them, lift me up," and she became the sky. When Nut trembles owing to the height, Ra creates cosmic supports. "If only I had the Hay gods supporting her." Shu, air, becomes the primary support. "O my son Shu, place yourself under my daughter Nut and guard for me, the two groups of infinite ones who live in the twilight. Place her over your head and nurture her." The Book of the Cow of Heaven details specifications for ritual imagery: a cow with inscriptions, 9 stars on her belly, and Shu supporting her from below. This served as Egypt's earliest astronomical handbook. The Book of Nut, also called the Fundamentals of the Course of the Stars, dates back to at least 2000 BCE, making it one of humanity's oldest systematic astronomical texts. Egyptian star mapping remained anchored in Nut's divine body. The 9 stars painted on her belly likely connected to the great Ennead of Heliopolis, the 9 primary deities of Egyptian cosmology. Several scholars have identified the Milky Way as a possible celestial manifestation of Nut's body. For Egyptians, understanding the stars meant understanding the goddess's anatomy. Astronomy and theology formed a single framework. The Book of Nut details celestial mechanics with precision, mapping star cycles while describing the deities associated with these celestial bodies, particularly the decans used for timekeeping. Celestial navigation utilized her anatomy as reference points, while astronomical precision served ritual timing. Nut's daily function, swallowing and birthing the sun, creates perpetual renewal rather than continuous drama. This cycle appears in Egyptian iconography, showing how Nut swallows the sun, which moves through her body at night before rebirth. Her body serves as both threshold and transformative space, where solar death yields to rebirth. This renewal extends to human souls, with the deceased becoming stars within her belly, the afterlife as celestial body art, immortality through divine tattoo. Move over modern burial practices. I'd like to become a twinkle in a goddess's navel. Thank you very much. Beyond solar rebirth, Nut's body facilitated all divine movement. For Egyptians, all celestial bodies traveled across her during daylight before being swallowed at dusk. This divine transportation system appears in ritual imagery, depicting a solar bark with Ra, positioned near Shu's hand as he supports the sky goddess. Nut's multifaceted role earned her titles including Coverer of the Sky, She Who Protects, Mistress of All, and She Who Holds 1,000 Souls. Her image on sarcophagus lids materialized this cosmic embrace. Tomb vaults were often painted dark blue with stars because the dying Egyptian wanted to enter a maternal goddess whose body constituted heaven itself. Nut's gender reverses patterns found across Indo-European cosmologies. While everyone else had sky daddies raining down thunderbolts, Egypt said, "Actually, we'd prefer a sky mommy who can multitask." Leave it to Egypt to flip the cosmic gender script. Where masculine sky gods typically pair with feminine earth goddesses, Nut, female sky, couples with Geb, male earth. Their positioning, Nut arching above, Shu supporting her middle, Geb reclining beneath, suggests equilibrium rather than domination. The cosmic lovers remain eternally separated, yet connected, their extremities touching at the horizons. Nut doesn't simply flip Ouranos' gender, she reimagines the sky's essential nature. Her body doesn't impose upon Earth, but creates protective space, doesn't threaten, but nurtures, doesn't demand subordination, but invites transformation. Egyptian texts describe the sun's nightly journey as fraught with danger, requiring Nut's protection from chaos forces. Her body became a battleground, sanctuary, and birth chamber in the drama of cosmic renewal. The Egyptians conceived her as the barrier separating chaos from ordered cosmos. The universe operates not through masculine force, but feminine capacity. The sky as vessel, threshold, and womb rather than dominating presence. Modern astronomy's abstract calculations seem far removed from Nut's maternal embrace. Yet the ancient vision of heaven as living deity rather than empty space contains something profound. The Egyptian cosmos pulsed with consciousness and care, a night sky participating in human destiny. Death meant entering the goddess rather than escaping the world. Salvation came through cosmic incorporation rather than otherworldly transcendence. When modern humans observe distant galaxies, we see mechanisms, not motherhood, physics, not physiology. Our universe has expanded into billions of light years of mostly empty space, with no divine body large enough to encompass it. Yet something familiar remains in how we speak of cosmic fabric, celestial bodies, and being made from stardust. Perhaps when Carl Sagan reminded us that we are star stuff harvested from the cosmos, he unknowingly continued how ancient Egyptians imagined becoming stars within Nut's celestial body. Most striking is how Egyptian cosmology handled divine change through transformation rather than violence. Ra could withdraw without overthrow. Nut could become the sky without force. Cosmic renovation proceeded through negotiation rather than combat. Gods collaborated to resolve cosmic problems instead of competing, forming a universe where evolution occurred through coordinated restructuring rather than patricide. The ancient Egyptian gods apparently read How to Reorganize Your Pantheon Without Bloodshed for Dummies, a management book that never quite made it to Mount Olympus. For those ancient stargazers along the Nile, heaven was a maternal embrace. They saw in night's darkness not absence but presence. In stars, not distant suns, but fellow souls. In cosmic cycles, not mechanical movements, but divine intention. Not offered what neither Hesiod's visceral mythology nor Plato's abstract principles could provide. Heaven was not a place but a person, watching over creation with starry eyes, a cosmos that cradled consciousness within a conscious cosmos. And somewhere, across the cosmic divide, Nut still stretches her star-spangled form over us all, wondering why we stopped sending thank you notes for each sunrise. After witnessing Ouranos' bloody fate at his son's hands and Nut's star-spangled embrace of the cosmos, we encounter in Mesopotamian theology a profoundly different celestial divinity. Anu represents neither violated patriarch nor maternal protector, but something altogether more conceptually sophisticated. A deity who embodies the principle of legitimate authority. Anu, the Mesopotamian sky god, is also the ruler of the notorious Anunnaki, who obviously bear his name. Yet he rules them very subtly. The Enuma Elish, Mesopotamia's great creation epic, captures this revolutionary theological concept through a pivotal scene. After the young storm god Marduk defeats the primordial chaos monster Tiamat, saving the gods from destruction, the divine assembly elevates him to supreme status with these remarkable words: "Your decree is unrivaled, your command is Anu." This declaration appears during Marduk's formal investiture as king of the gods, when the assembly bestows upon him the authority to rule the cosmos. What makes this formulation extraordinary is that it doesn't merely compare Marduk to Anu, or suggest he has similar power. Instead, it establishes ontological identity. Marduk's command literally becomes Anu. This reveals the essential Mesopotamian insight. Divine authority functions as a transferable current. Where Greek mythology required Kronos to castrate Ouranos and Zeus to overthrow Kronos, Mesopotamian theology accomplishes divine succession through ceremonial bestowal, like royal families do. This scene beautifully illuminates why Anu, despite his theoretical position as supreme deity, rarely appears as an active character in Mesopotamian myths. His primary function is not to perform heroic deeds, but to embody the principle of sovereignty itself, a principle that maintains identity precisely through its transmission to others. Thus, Anu operates like a veritable ultimate deus absconditus. The Enuma Elish establishes Anu's position through cosmic genealogy. Anu was their heir, rival of his father. Verily, Anu, Anshar's firstborn, was his equal. This succession narrative differs markedly from Hesiod's violent account of Ouranos. Where Greek mythology emphasizes generational conflict, Mesopotamian tradition emphasizes continuity through equivalence. Anu becomes equal to his predecessor rather than overthrowing him. The genealogical chain continues. Anu sired his image Nudimud. This Nudimud was the master of his father, of broad wisdom, understanding, mighty in strength, mightier by far than his grandfather, Anshar. Each generational transfer amplifies rather than diminishes divine capacity, creating a cumulative wisdom that builds across generations. The text describes Nudimud, another name for Ea Enki, as master of his father. Yet this mastery comes through exceeding rather than overthrowing, a model of succession through enhancement rather than elimination. These aspects will be apparent throughout all subsequent Mesopotamian theology. When Marduk later rises to prominence, he does so not by deposing Anu, but by embodying his authority in a new form. The divine succession operates through amplification. Each new divine sovereign adds to the cosmic architecture of authority. Then the tale of Adapa, a sage of extraordinary wisdom created by Ea, reveals how Anu's authority manifests through juridical means. The story begins with cosmic disruption. The south wind ceases to blow for 7 days after Adapa. Fishing for his divine master Ea, breaks its wing in anger when it capsizes his boat. This disruption triggers formal inquiry rather than immediate divine rage. Anu called to his messenger Ilabrat, "Why has the south wind not blown upon the land for 7 days?" His messenger Ilabrat answered him, "My lord Adapa, the son of Ea, the wing of the south wind has broken." The exchange unfolds as an administrative report filled through institutional structures. There's no personal vendettas, no lightnings, no thunders, no castrations, just paperwork. Adapa appears before the celestial court, and Ea provides detailed instructions that frame the encounter as formal audience. When thou comest up, and when thou approachest the door of Anu, at the door of Anu, Tammuz and Gishida are standing. These divine doorkeepers function as intermediaries within an established protocol. They will look at one another and be astonished. Good words they will speak to Anu. The judgment itself follows procedural rather than arbitrary logic. Upon hearing Adapa's testimony, "For the house of my lord in the midst of the sea I was catching fish. The sea was like a mirror, the south wind blew and capsized me." And witnessing the intercession of Tammuz and Gishida, Anu offers Adapa the food of immortality. When Adapa refuses, following Ea's deceptive advice, Anu responds not with fury, but with procedural dismissal. Take him and bring him back to his earth. It is clear that in Mesopotamian theology, Anu and the Anunnaki principally employed judicial reasoning, which is a theological vision radically different from the emotionally volatile Olympians or the mystically remote Egyptian deities. Unlike Zeus with his thunderbolts or Nut with her star-spangled body, Anu makes his most profound theological statement through visual absence. Archaeological records confirm a striking fact. We can't find Anu in any painting or drawing. Instead, texts from the Kassite period tell us that Anu was usually represented through a horned crown on a pedestal, authority without personification, sovereignty without sovereign, Deus Otiosus. This symbolic representation appears on boundary stones, kuduru, where the horned crown was placed above the symbols of Ishtar, Shamash, and Sin. The visual positioning reflects theological hierarchy, the principle of authority situated beneath celestial bodies but above more active deities. The empty throne eloquently expresses Anu's essential nature as transferable power. Divine authority is a symbol awaiting its temporary bearer. This iconographic restraint contrasts sharply with both Egyptian and Greek religious art, where divine personalities receive elaborate visual representation. But somehow, Anu's visual absence speaks more profoundly than presence could. The empty throne starts to feel like divine transcendence, authority beyond any particular embodiment. And while creation myths typically involve physical generation, divine blood, dismemberment, or sexual reproduction, Mesopotamian accounts reveal creative power through administrative decree. In Era and Ishum, we witness Anu assigning functions to 7 destructive deities through pure declaration. He said to the second, "Burn like fire, scorch like flame." He commanded the third, "Look like a lion. Let him who sees you be paralyzed with fear." He said to the fourth, "Let a mountain collapse when you present your fierce arms." He said to the fifth, "Blast like the wind, scan the circumference of the earth." This creative paradigm operates through verbal designation rather than physical emanation. Each entity receives its essential character through functional specification. Divine speech directly constitutes ontological reality. The narrative concludes, after Anu had ordained destinies for all of the 7, he gave those very ones to Era, warrior of the gods. Creation unfolds through assignment and delegation, a theological framework where ordering supersedes generating as divine activity. The pattern extends to the cosmic structure. The Enuma Elish describes universal organization through hierarchical arrangement. Anu, Enlil, and Ea he made occupy their places. Divine creativity manifests through organizational specification. It makes me wonder, is that how divine nature and cosmic order really works? But just as we begin to familiarize with Anu's abstract nature, a startling counter-narrative emerges from Mesopotamia's cultural periphery. The Hurrian Hittite Kumabi cycle presents Anu in terms strikingly reminiscent of Hesiod's Ouranos. Anu tries to fly to heaven, but Kumabi bites off his manhood and swallows everything. Then Kumabi gets pregnant with Anu's son, Teshub. This narrative sequence, castration of sky deity, ingestion of generative organs, subsequent birth of storm god, isn't this similar to the Greek succession myth? What are the odds of this being a coincidence, really? Clearly there are complex pathways of mythological transmission between cultural spheres. This peripheral tradition illuminates how abstract theological concepts undergo dramatic re-embodiment at cultural boundaries. The administrative force becomes a wounded patriarch. Cosmic law transforms into generative flesh. We witness the translation of abstract theological principles into narrative frameworks to facilitate cross-cultural transmission. The Hurrian variant likely represents the missing link between Mesopotamian and Greek cosmological traditions. Abstract Mesopotamian theological concepts received narrative embodiment as they traveled westward, a process of religious translation that transformed principles into dramas as they crossed other cultures. However, the most remarkable chapter in Anu's theological biography unfolds during the Seleucid period, late 4th to 2nd centuries BCE, when archaeological and textual evidence documents an unprecedented elevation in his cultic significance. The construction of the massive Bitres complex and Essara ziggurat in Uruk, the biggest such structure known from Mesopotamia, represents a theological revolution, the transformation of abstract principle into central devotional focus, a clear counter-evolutionary religious development, abstract concept becoming personalized deity rather than personalized deity becoming abstract concept. This suggests deliberate innovation rather than natural evolution. Evidence indicates systematic reorganization of religious institutions following Persian suppression of Babylonian rebellions in 484 BCE, with families dedicated to Anu's cult gaining prominence over traditional Ishtar-focused priesthoods. Cuneiform archives demonstrate Anu's increasing prominence in theophoric names during the reigns of Artaxerxes I and Darius II, with evidence suggesting his cult reached predominance by approximately 420 BCE. The Seleucid period accelerated this transformation, with the Bitres becoming the new center of the city's religious life. It was a theological renaissance, a sophisticated intellectual response to changing political circumstances. Uruk's priestly elite transformed abstract principle into concrete devotional practice. It was a project that established cultural continuity amid imperial domination, while simultaneously elevating local traditions within new power structures. The concept of Anutu, Anuship, established the metaphysical foundation for both divine and human governance throughout Mesopotamian history. Texts describe this quality as heavenly power, or literally Anuship, divine authority conceived as transferable essence rather than personal attribute. It was useful because it provided flexibility for political legitimation. When Babylon elevated Marduk or Assyria exalted Ashur, these patron deities received Anu's authority through theological delegation rather than mythological overthrow. The Enuma Elish articulates this principle with elegant precision. No one among the gods shall transgress your bounds. Divine authority flows downward while maintaining metaphysical integrity. Sovereignty transfers without requiring cosmic upheaval. The implications extended to earthly governance as well. Kings claimed legitimacy through divine investment of Anutu, rather than through biological descent, as in Egypt, or heroic accomplishment, as in Greece. Sovereignty becomes a participation in a transcendent principle, rather than manifestation of personal charisma. This, of course, facilitated political transitions across changing dynasties without requiring theological rupture. Moreover, Mesopotamian astronomical texts reveal sophisticated integration of celestial observation with theological frameworks. The Muldot Appian treatise divides the night sky into three divine domains: the way of Enlil in the northern celestial regions, the way of Ea near the equator, and between them, the way of Anu. This tripartite division transforms astronomical observation into theological cartography, mapping divine jurisdictions onto physical phenomena. The boundaries of Anu's celestial territory encompassed the band approximately 17 degrees north and south of the celestial equator. This integration reached unprecedented sophistication during the Seleucid period, when specific circumpolar stars received designation as the Great Anu and Antu of heaven, and became recipients of cultic offerings. This amalgamation of astronomical precision and theological framework reveals a distinctive Mesopotamian intellectual approach. Where Greek natural philosophy increasingly separated physical phenomena from divine agency, Mesopotamian thought maintained their synergy through sophisticated mathematical models that simultaneously served scientific observation and theological articulation. Anu ultimately represents Mesopotamia's most profound theological innovation, divine authority conceptualized as metaphysical current rather than personal attribute. This sophisticated god model established sovereignty as a transferable essence capable of inhabiting multiple vessels, while maintaining essential identity, a theological articulation that allowed remarkable adaptation to changing political landscapes without sacrificing conceptual continuity. Where Ouranos manifests through a violated body and Nut through stellar embrace, Anu operates through transmission itself, through divine authority functioning as living current, flowing through cosmic hierarchies. The empty throne at heaven's summit stands as testament to sovereignty conceived as a principle rather than person, as transmissible essence rather than static possession, something that is earned. This is how religion and politics found a legitimation that would otherwise be impossible in systems where divine power remained inherently bound to specific bearers. By separating sovereignty from sovereign, Mesopotamian theology created flexible systems for accommodating changing realities, while maintaining metaphysical coherence across religious and political transformations. Through comparative analysis of celestial divinities across ancient traditions, we glimpse fundamentally different conceptualizations of divine authority. Greek cosmology dramatizes power through generational conflict. Egyptian religion embodies it through maternal embrace. Mesopotamian theology articulates it as living current flowing through multiple vessels without diminishment. Each tradition revealing distinct understandings of and relationship between sovereignty, embodiment, and cosmic order. But we are not done yet. The name Ahura Mazda is both a linguistic artifact and a theological declaration. Linguistically, Mazda derives from Proto-Indo-Iranian Mazda, ultimately traceable to Proto-Indo-European menzcunet, literally placing one's mind, hence wisdom. When combined with Ahura, Lord, the complete designation establishes a theological framework where sovereignty manifests through cognitive illumination. Unlike deities whose names evoke natural phenomena or physical attributes, Ahura Mazda's very designation appears as an abstract intellectual principle, and everything is set in place by Ahura Mazda, as the Zoroastrian texts convey. This etymological foundation proves remarkably stable across linguistic transitions, from Old Avestan to Younger Avestan, from Old Persian to Middle Persian, Pahlavi. The essential conceptual linkage between divine authority and wisdom persists. In Old Persian inscriptions, the name appears as Ahura Mazda, while Parthian texts record it as Ahura Mazda. The Sasanian form Ormazd continues this linguistic trajectory while preserving the fundamental association between sovereignty and intelligence. So we have both linguistic consistency but conceptual continuity, a persistent theological framework where divine authority derives from cognitive capacity rather than from physical might. The name itself represents a revolutionary theological declaration. The supreme deity governs through understanding and knowledge, which are power. Zoroastrian tradition frames the prophet's initial encounter with Ahura Mazda through explicitly visual metaphors of illumination. It's said that Zoroaster had a revelation when he was 30, the same age Nietzsche's Zarathustra had when he left his home and the lake of his home and went into the mountains. The same age Jesus started teaching. What are you saying, Nietzsche? Anyway, Zoroaster, while gathering water to perform a ritual at the rosy dawn, at 30 encountered Amesha Spenta, Vohumana, who led Zoroaster to Ahura Mazda. Here Zoroaster learned the cardinal principles of the good religion, which became Zoroastrianism. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The imagery here proves significant. Dawn, the transition from darkness to light, is a temporal setting. Nietzsche knew this too. Vohumana, good mind, functions as intermediary. The revelation itself comes not through thunderous pronouncement, but through instructive teaching. Something probably Plato got too excited about. This foundational narrative establishes divine revelation through visionary illumination. Ahura Mazda manifests through transmission of wisdom. As the Zoroastrian texts say, taught by Ahura Mazda, uttered by Zarathustra. Inasmuch as a new life is a worthy one, may you, Ahura Mazda, now rule at will. Zoroaster believed Ahura Mazda is the source of all that is good and thus is worthy of the highest worship and sacrifices. You, who with the help of these songs, men, are guarding order and good thought for the duration of a lifespan, teach you me, O Mazda, O Ahura, to speak in accordance with your inspiration, by your mouth, the words by which the first existence will be here every time. And order is the best good. But Ahura Mazda reveals himself not primarily as creator or ruler, but as an ethical foundation, guarding order and good thought for the duration of a lifespan, a being whose essential nature manifests through moral radiance, rather than creative capacity or administrative function. The relationship between deity and prophet is different from what we've seen so far. Ethical instruction rather than ritual command constitutes the content of divine revelation. Intellectual clarity, rather than supplicatory submission, defines the prophetic response. The 17 Gathic hymns attributed to Zarathustra himself constitute our earliest textual window into Ahura Mazda's theological conceptualization. Composed in Old Avestan, a linguistic stratum of remarkable antiquity, these texts present a philosophical sophistication that transcends their historical context. Yasna 31.8 establishes the epistemological foundation of divine authority. I recognize thee, O Mazda, in my thought, that thou the first art, also the last, that thou art father of Vohu Mana, good mind or good thought. When I apprehend thee with mine eye, that thou art the true creator of right, Asha, and art the Lord to judge the actions of life. This formulation reveals several crucial theological innovations. First, divine sovereignty manifests through ethical categories: good thought, truth, right-mindedness. Second, human approach to divinity occurs through moral action rather than ritual propitiation. Third, divine power becomes recognizable specifically through ethical qualities rather than through physical demonstrations of might. The cosmological interrogatives of Yasna 44 further emphasize wisdom as divine attribute and much more, and deserves to be presented fully. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, as to prayer, how it should be to one of you. O Mazda Ahura, might one like thee teach to a friend such as I am, and through friendly right give us support, that good thought may come to us. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether at the beginning of the best existence the recompenses shall bring blessedness to him that meets with them. Surely he, O right, the Holy One, who watches in his spirit the transgression of all, if himself the benefactor of all that lives, O Mazda. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, who is by generation the father of right at the first? Who determined the path of sun and stars? Who is it by whom the moon waxes and wanes again? This, O Mazda, and yet more I am fain to know. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, who upholds the earth beneath and the firmament from falling? Who the waters and the plants? Who yoked swiftness to winds and clouds? Who is, O Mazda, creator of good thought? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, what artist made light and darkness? What artist made sleep and waking? Who made morning, noon and night, that called the understanding man to his duty? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether what I proclaim is verily the truth. Will right with its actions give aid at the last? Will piety, will good thought announce from the dominion? For whom hast thou made the pregnant cow that brings good luck? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, who created together with dominion the precious piety, who made by wisdom the son obedient to his father? I strive to recognize by these things thee, O Mazda, creator of all things through the Holy Spirit. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura. I could keep in mind thy design, O Mazda, and understand aright the maxims of life which I ask of good thought and right. How will my soul partake of the good that gives increase? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether for the self that I would bring to perfection, that of the man of insight, the Lord of dominion would make promises of the sure dominion, one of thy likenesses, O Mazda, who dwells in one abode with right and good thought. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, The religion which is best for all that are, which in union with right should prosper all that is mine, will they duly observe it, the religion of my creed, with words and action of piety, in desire for thy future good things, O Mazda. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether piety will extend to those to whom thy religion shall be proclaimed. I was ordained at the first for this by thee. All others I look upon with hatred of spirit. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura. Who among those with whom I would speak is a righteous man, and who a liar? On which side is the enemy? On this. Or is he the enemy, the liar who opposes thy blessings? How shall it be with him? Is he not to be thought of as an enemy? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether we shall drive the lie away from us to those who, being full of disobedience, will not strive after fellowship with right, nor trouble themselves with counsel of good thought. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether I would put the lie into the hands of right, to cast her down by the words of thy law, to work a mighty destruction among the liars, to bring torments upon them and enmities, O Mazda. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, if thou hast power over this to ward off from me through right, when the two opposing hosts meet in battle, according to those decrees which thou wilt firmly establish. Whether is it of the twain that thou wilt give victory? This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura. Who is victorious to protect by thy doctrine all that are? By vision assure me how to set up the judge that heals the world. Then let him have obedience coming with good thought unto every man whom thou desirest, O Mazda. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether through you I shall attain my goal, O Mazda, even attachment unto you, and that my voice may be effectual, that welfare and immortality may be ready to unite according to that promise, with him who joins himself with right. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, whether I shall indeed, O right, earn the reward, even 10 mares with a stallion and a camel, which was promised to me, O Mazda, as well as through thee the future gift of welfare and immortality. This I ask thee, tell me truly, Ahura, he that will not give the reward to him that earns it, even to the man who fulfilling his word gives him what he undertook, what penalty shall come to him for the same at the present? I know that which shall come to him at the last. Have the Daivas ever exercised good dominion? And I ask of those who see how for the Daivas' sake the Carapan and the Usij give cattle to violence, and how the Kavi made them continually to mourn, instead of taking care that they make the pastures prosper through right. These questions establish authority through comprehensive understanding. The deity rules through knowing. Francis Bacon and Plato and Pythagoras and Nietzsche would approve. The interrogative form itself proves theologically significant. The prophet approaches divinity not through declarative praise, but through the philosophical inquiry we all know is true with our hearts, but have forgotten with our minds. Perhaps most revolutionary is Yasna 30's articulation of cosmic ethical dualism. Now I will proclaim to those who will hear the things that the understanding man should remember, for hymns unto Ahura and prayers to good thought. Also the felicity that is with the heavenly lights, which through right shall be beheld by him who wisely thinks. Hear with your ears the best things. Look upon them with clear-seeing thought, for decision between the two beliefs, each man for himself before the great consummation. Bethinking you that it be accomplished to our pleasure. Now the two primal spirits who reveal themselves in vision as twins are the better and the bad, in thought and word and action, and between these two the wise ones chose aright, the foolish not so. And when these twain spirits came together in the beginning, they created life and not life, and that at the last worst existence shall be to the followers of the lie, but the best existence to him that follows right. Of these twain spirits he that followed the lie chose doing the worst things. The holiest spirit chose right, he that clothes him with the massy heavens as a garment. So likewise they that are fain to please Ahura Mazda by dutiful actions. Between these twain the Daivas also chose not aright, for infatuation came upon them as they took counsel together, so that they chose the worst thought. Then they rushed together to violence, that they might enfeeble the world of men. And to him, that is mankind, came dominion, and good mind and right and piety gave continued life to their bodies and indestructibility. so that by thy retributions through molten metal he may gain the prize over the others. So when there cometh their punishment for their sins, then, O Mazda, at thy command shall good thought establish the dominion in the consummation, for those who deliver the lie, O Ahura, into the hands of right. So may we be those that make this world advance, O Mazda and ye other Ahuras. Come hither, vouchsafing to us admission into your company and usher, in order that our thought may gather together while reason is still shaky. Then truly on the world of lie shall come the destruction of delight, but they who get themselves good name shall be partakers in the promised reward in the fair abode of good thought, of Mazda and of right. If, O ye mortals, ye mark those commandments which Mazda hath ordained, of happiness and pain, the long punishment for the follower of the drudge, and blessings for the followers of the right, then hereafter shall it be well. Moral choices, ethical choices, right choices, mindful choices replace natural processes as fundamental cosmic principles. The Yasna liturgy, the central ritual text of Zoroastrianism, incorporates the Gathic hymns while embedding them within ceremonial context and ritual practice, providing communal expression of the illuminative theology. The opening invocation, Yasna 1, establishes Ahura Mazda's primacy among divine entities. I announce and carry out this yasna for the Creator Ahura Mazda, the radiant and glorious, the greatest and the best, the most beautiful, the most firm, the wisest, and the one of all whose body is the most perfect, who attains his ends the most infallibly, because of his Asha, to him who disposes our minds aright, who sends his joy-creating grace afar, who made us and has fashioned us, and who has nourished and protected us, who is the most bounteous spirit. The divine attributes mentioned here emphasize the luminous manifestation of Ahura Mazda. The ceremonial context transforms intellectual recognition into communal acknowledgement, abstractive theology into embodied practice. Ritual implementation of the yasna developed sophisticated representation of illuminative theology. The sacred fire, atas, serves as a physical manifestation of divine radiance. The Haoma ritual transforms plant material into visionary medium. The bearsman twigs establish connection between physical and metaphysical realms. Through these ritual elements, abstract theological principles gain sensory manifestation. Intellectual concepts achieve communal expression. The liturgical corpus extends beyond the yasna to include diverse textual traditions. The Visperad, all the masters, supplements the yasna with additional invocations. The Vendidad, law against demons, establishes purificatory practices. The Yasht hymns honor various yazatas, worthy beings, while maintaining Ahura Mazda's supremacy. This elaborate ritual system developed increasingly complex expressions of the fundamental theological framework: divine sovereignty manifesting through wisdom rather than might, ethical illumination rather than domination. Composed in a later linguistic stratum, the younger Avestan texts elaborate Ahura Mazda's relationship to other divine entities while preserving his illuminative sovereignty. These texts, including the Yashts, portions of the Yasna and the Vendidad, represent significant theological development while maintaining the essential conceptual framework. The younger Avesta introduces increasing elaboration of divine entities associated with Ahura Mazda. The Amesha Spentas, bounteous immortals, embody abstract qualities: Vohu Mana, good thought; Ashavahishta, best truth; Kshathra Varya, desirable dominion; Spenta Almighty, beneficent devotion; Harvatat, wholeness; and Ameritat, immortality. These beings represent not independent deities, but manifestations of Ahura Mazda's own attributes, divine qualities gaining personified expression while remaining essentially connected to their source in divine wisdom. This theological elaboration extends to the Yazatas, beings worthy of worship, who serve as intermediaries between human and divine realms. Figures like Mithra, covenant; Srausha, obedience; and Rashnu, justice, embody specific ethical principles while remaining subordinate to Ahura Mazda's illuminative sovereignty. Even natural phenomena receive ethical reinterpretation. The earth, Zam, represents righteous cultivation; water, Apo, embodies purification; fire, Atar, manifests divine wisdom in physical form. What emerges from this textual elaboration is increasing complexity within consistent theological framework. Divine sovereignty continues to manifest through wisdom rather than might, through ethical illumination rather than domination. The proliferation of divine entities represents not polytheistic fragmentation, but theological elaboration. Abstract principles gaining personified expression, while maintaining essential unity in Ahura Mazda's illuminative wisdom. The translation of illuminative theology into political authority appears most explicitly in Achaemenid royal inscriptions. A great god is Ahura Mazda, who created this earth, who created yonder sky, who created man, who created happiness for man, who made Xerxes king, one king of many, one lord of many. These monumental texts, composed in Old Persian, Elamite and Babylonian, establish theocentric legitimation of imperial rule, transforming abstract theological principles into concrete political ideology. Darius I at Behistun. Inscription provides our earliest non-Avestan textual evidence for this political dimension. King Darius says, "By the grace of Ahura Mazda am I king. Ahura Mazda has granted me the kingdom." King Darius says, "These are the countries which are subject unto me, and by the grace of Ahura Mazda I became king of them." King Darius says, "These are the countries which are subject to me. By the grace of Ahura Mazda they became subject to me. They brought tribute unto me. Whatsoever commands have been laid on them by me, by night or by day, have been performed by them." King Darius says, "Within these lands whosoever was a friend, him have I surely protected. Whosoever was hostile, him have I utterly destroyed. By the grace of Ahura Mazda, these lands have conformed to my decrees. As it was commanded unto them by me, so was it done." King Darius says, "Ahura Mazda has granted unto me this empire. Ahura Mazda brought me help until I gained this empire. By the grace of Ahura Mazda do I hold this empire." These formulations need no introduction. They establish royal legitimacy through divine wisdom. The king rules justly because he participates in Ahura Mazda's illuminative vision. The inscription repeats the formula, "By the favor of Ahura Mazda I am king, Vasna Oramazdaha Adam Xayathia Ami," multiple times, establishing divine illumination as source of royal legitimation. This political theology differs significantly from divine right frameworks of other ancient cultures. The Persian king claims not divine parentage, but divine wisdom, participation in celestial illumination rather than descent from divine progenitor. Archaeological evidence from Persepolis reveals further dimensions of this political theology. The relief sculptures depict the king enthroned below the winged symbol traditionally associated with Ahura Mazda, though scholars debate this identification. The architectural program places Royal Audience Hall, Apadana, in explicit relationship with divine presence. The entire ceremonial complex establishes visual representation of the theological principle. Royal authority as manifestation of divine wisdom. This political dimension extends beyond monumental display to administrative practice. The Persepolis fortification tablets, administrative documents recording imperial economic transactions, include references to offerings made to Ahura Mazda alongside other deities. These texts demonstrate integration of theological principle into governmental function, illuminative sovereignty into imperial administration. Later, Achaemenid inscriptions reveal evolution within this political theology. The trilingual inscription of Artaxerxes II introduces invocations to Mithra and Anahita alongside Ahura Mazda, evidence of theological elaboration beyond strict monotheistic formulation. This development suggests increasing accommodation of diverse religious traditions within imperial framework, while maintaining the essential theology of illuminative sovereignty. Textual sources gain crucial context through archaeological evidence, which reveals both significant absence and eventual emergence of material representations. The lack of anthropomorphic depiction of Ahura Mazda before the late 5th century BCE suggests theological restraint consistent with illuminative rather than embodied divinity. Early Achaemenid practice demonstrates this restraint through symbolic rather than anthropomorphic representation. The winged disc symbol appearing in imperial contexts has been variously interpreted as representing divine glory, Kavarena, rather than direct depiction of Ahura Mazda himself. A symbolic approach which maintains theological sophistication while providing visual referent for divine presence. Abstraction without complete absence. Most striking is Herodotus's observation that Persian religious practice included no images of the gods, no temples nor altars, and consider the use of such things a sign of folly. While likely exaggerated, this classical observation suggests significant theological restraint in early Iranian religious practice, a restraint consistent with the concept of a divinity embodied as illuminative wisdom rather than physical presence. Archaeological evidence indicates significant transformation in this representational approach during the later Achaemenid period. The first evidence of anthropomorphic representation appears on coins minted under Artaxerxes II, 404–358 BC, where a male figure emerges from a winged disc. Literary evidence suggests that a statue of Ahura Mazda was erected by a Persian governor of Lydia in 365 BCE. These developments suggest increasing accommodation of Hellenistic representational practices while maintaining essential theological framework. This iconographic evolution accelerates during Sasanian period, when Ahura Mazda appears in rock reliefs presenting the ring of kingship to Sasanian monarchs. These scenes, appearing at Naksh-i-Rostam and other imperial sites, show fully anthropomorphic deity participating in investiture ceremonies. The visual representation transforms abstract theological principle into concrete royal legitimation, divine wisdom into imperial authority. Material culture thus reveals a complex trajectory from symbolic restraint to anthropomorphic representation, a trajectory reflecting both sophistication and cultural accommodation. The initial absence of concrete imagery suggests that divine reality transcends physical form, while later iconographic development demonstrates adaptation to changing cultural contexts. External observers also provide crucial knowledge on how illuminative sovereignty translated across cultural boundaries. Greek and Roman sources, while viewing Iranian religion through their own interpretative frameworks, preserve significant insights into the distinctive theological conception of Ahura Mazda. Plutarch offers the most detailed Greco-Roman interpretation in his treatise Isis and Osiris. He describes Oromases, born from the purest light, and Arimanius, born from darkness, are constantly at war with each other, and Oromases created 6 gods, the first of good thought, the second of truth, the third of order, and of the rest, one of wisdom, one of wealth, and one the artificer of pleasure in what is honorable. This Hellenistic interpretation emphasizes several crucial aspects of Ahura Mazda's illuminative character. His ontological emergence from the purest light, his creation of entities embodying ethical principles, good thought, truth, order, and his cosmic opposition to darkness. Plutarch further elaborates this luminous cosmology. Oromases enlarged himself to thrice his former size and removed himself as far distant from the sun as the sun is distant from the earth, and adorned the heavens with stars. One star he set there before all others as a guardian and watchman, the dog star. This celestial arrangement establishes visual hierarchy where the divine illuminator transcends even the physical sun, while maintaining order through stellar guardianship. Additionally, Herodotus observes that Persians sacrifice to the sun and moon, to the earth, to fire, to water, and to the winds. An observation that suggests integration of natural elements within religious practice as physical phenomena started to be understood as manifestations of divine principles. Roman authors similarly attempted to interpret Iranian theology through familiar categories. Strabo identifies Oromazdes as equivalent to Zeus, while Hesychius associates him with good fortune, agathos daimon. These interpretations necessarily simplify complex theological concepts, but demonstrate significant cross-cultural interest in the distinctive Iranian conception of divine sovereignty. Later Zoroastrian literature in Middle Persian, Pahlavi, demonstrates continuing theological evolution. The Bundahishan, primal creation, elaborates the cosmogonic narrative in the name of the creator Ormazd. The Zandakas, Zand knowing or tradition informed, which is first about Ormazd's original creation and the antagonism of the evil spirit, and afterwards about the nature of the creatures from the original creation till the end, which is the future existence, Tanu I Pasino. As revealed by the religion of the Mazdayasnians, so it is declared that Ormazd is supreme in omniscience and goodness, and unrivaled in splendor. The region of light is the place of Ormazd, which they call endless light, and the omniscience and goodness of the unrivaled Ormazd is what they call revelation. Revelation is the explanation of both spirits together. One is he who is independent of unlimited time, because Ormazd and the region, religion, and time of Ormazd were and are and ever will be, while Ahriman in darkness, with backward understanding and desire for destruction, was in the abyss, and it is he who will not be. And the place of that destruction, and also of that darkness, is what they call the endlessly dark, and between them was empty space, that is what they call air, in which is now their meeting. This explicit association between divine sovereignty and luminous dwelling place reinforces conceptual framework where authority manifests through ethical radiance rather than physical power. The decoded, acts of religion, similarly maintains association between divine revelation and intellectual illumination. The religion, which is the revelation of Mazda to Zarathustra, is all intelligence, all goodness, all glory. The fundamental connection between divine wisdom and ethical perfection remains central even through significant theological elaboration, a persistent conceptual framework where authority manifests through illuminative wisdom rather than raw power. These Middle Persian texts develop increasingly elaborate narratives concerning cosmic conflict between Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, Ahriman. The Bundahishn describes initial separation between the two forces. Between them was emptiness. That is what they call air, in which is now their mingling. This cosmological dualism receives systematic expression as light versus darkness, as manifestation of good versus evil, as wisdom versus ignorance. Even as narrative complexity increases, the fundamental theological principle remains consistent. Divine sovereignty manifests through wisdom rather than might, through ethical illumination rather than domination. A conceptual continuity across linguistic transitions from Avestan to Pahlavi, across historical periods from Achaemenid to Sasanian, that demonstrates remarkable stability in core theological conception. The Gathic vision thus says, "With truth as bearer then shall one's soul pass over the Kinvat bridge. Thus shall one come into the dwelling of the wise Lord." Wisdom is again central. The individual crosses the cosmic bridge not through ritual sacrifice but through ethical truth. Later, Zoroastrian texts elaborate this ethical soteriology into systematic eschatology. The concept of frashokareti, making wonderful, describes cosmic renovation through cooperative action between divine and human realms. The Bundahishn describes this eschatological culmination. Then Ormazd and the seven Amaraspans, by recitation of the Ahunwa, will perform the spiritual yasna, and at that yasna the evil spirit with the demons will become powerless. The same essential ethical dualism. But there's a progressive trajectory toward the ultimate triumph of wisdom over ignorance, light over darkness. Individual salvation occurs through participation in this cosmic process, alignment with divine wisdom through ethical choice, through embodiment of truth in thought, word, and deed. The illuminative sovereignty of Ahura Mazda creates profound philosophical possibilities for conceptualizing divine transcendence. By establishing wisdom rather than power as essential divine attribute, this theological framework transforms religious understanding from submission to participation, from fearful propitiation to ethical alignment. This reconceptualization manifests in several distinctive philosophical innovations. First, divine transcendence becomes compatible with immediate accessibility. The utterly transcendent divine wisdom becomes directly available through ethical practice. Second, human agency gains cosmic significance. Moral choices participate directly in universal struggle between wisdom and ignorance, light and darkness. Third, Religious meaning shifts from ritual performance to ethical transformation, from external observance to internal illumination. This philosophy anticipates remarkably modern theological concepts. The emphasis on ethical choice rather than predestination establishes human moral agency as cosmologically significant. The identification of divinity with wisdom rather than power anticipates philosophical criticism of anthropomorphic conceptions of deity. The cosmic dualism between good and evil addresses the perennial problem of theodicy, divine goodness maintained despite evident suffering through acknowledgement of opposing force. Perhaps most significantly, this philosophy establishes a perfect balance between divine transcendence and immanence. The utterly transcendent divine wisdom becomes immediately immanent through ethical illumination that enables direct human participation with our moral clarity rather than our bodies. It is not unwise to think that these newly presented possibilities influenced subsequent religious thought throughout Mediterranean and Near Eastern worlds. The most profound innovation lies in reconceptualizing divine authority through wisdom rather than power. A shift from sovereignty manifesting through domination to sovereignty manifesting through illumination. The explicit ethical dualism represents a second major innovation with far-reaching implications. By establishing cosmic struggle between good and evil, wisdom and ignorance, light and darkness, this framework provides a coherent explanation for experienced reality of moral conflict while maintaining divine goodness. The theological problem of evil receives innovative response through acknowledgement of opposing force, divine goodness preserved through cosmic dualism. The third significant innovation lies in democratization of divine access through ethical practice. By establishing a direct relationship between moral choice and divine presence, this framework bypasses institutional mediation and ritualistic complexity. The individual approaches divinity not through elaborate ceremony, but through righteous thought, word and deed, a revolutionary simplification of religious practice with profound implications for individual spiritual autonomy. When subsequent monotheistic traditions declare God is light or describe divinity as perfect wisdom, they draw, consciously or unconsciously, from this Iranian reconceptualization. If Hesiod's Ouranos writhes in primal agony, Nut arches over Egypt with maternal stars, Anu reigns through an empty Mesopotamian throne, and Ahura Mazda bathes Iran in luminous wisdom, the Vedic tradition unveils Varuna, a sky god whose dominion is neither visceral nor nurturing, neither abstract nor radiant, but a web of cosmic regulation, moral scrutiny, and aqueous mystery. In the Rigveda, composed between 1500–1200 BCE and among the oldest sacred texts known to humanity, Varuna stands as the sovereign of RTA, the invisible order that threads the universe together, aligning the dance of planets with the sanctity of human oaths. His name, potentially from the Proto-Indo-European, were to bind or to cover, conjures a sky that envelops, restrains and watches. A divine warden whose gaze spans the firmament and plunges into the depths, his authority as unyielding as it is enigmatic. Varuna's presence in the Rigveda resonates with awe and precision, nowhere more vividly than in Hymn 25, Book 1. He knows the path of birds that fly through heaven, and sovereign of the sea, he knows the ships that are thereon. Not a god who wrestles earth or thunders from Olympus, he's a cartographer of existence, tracking avian flights and maritime courses with equal mastery. The hymn unfolds his cosmic resume. True to his holy law, he knows the 12 moons with their progeny, he knows the moon of later birth. No bloody birth or delegated decree here. Varuna calibrates reality, cataloguing lunar cycles and their offspring like a celestial archivist. And then, Varuna, true to holy law, sits down among his people. He, most wise, sits there to govern all. Unlike Ouranos, undone by his physicality, Varuna's power is cerebral, his sky a vast blueprint etched with RTA's fine lines, a mind mapping the cosmos rather than a body shaping it. This celestial sovereignty intertwines with a startling duality. Varuna is also Lord of the Waters, a union that defies the neat divisions of other cosmologies. Hymn 25 hints at this. Sovereign of the sea, he knows the ships that are thereon. These words tie him to oceanic depths as well as airy heights. Elsewhere, the Rigveda elaborates, Varuna cut a pathway out for Surya and led the watery floods of rivers onward. The mares, as in a race, speed on in order. He made great channels for the days to follow. In Vedic thought, sky and water aren't opposites but mirrors. His heavens ripple like an ocean, his oceans shimmer like the stars. He knows the pathway of the wind, the spreading high and mighty wind. He knows the gods who dwell above. States the Rigveda. His omniscience spans the wind's vast sweep and the divine heights, subtly suggesting his command over the elements that bridge sky and sea, a theological fusion binding ethereal and terrestrial under one law. Picture him enthroned where the Milky Way brushes the horizon, rivers streaming from his feet, stars glinting in his watery reflection, a god whose reach dissolves boundaries, his RTA a current pulsing through both realms. But Varuna's dominion transcends geography to grip the moral sphere, where he emerges as RTA's relentless enforcer, a judge whose scales weigh truth against falsehood. Hymn 25 pleads, "Whatever law of thine, O God, O Varuna, as we are men, day after day we violate. Give us not as a prey to death to be destroyed by thee in wrath." This isn't Plato's sanitized contemplation or Homer's passive sealing. Varuna's vigilance pierces daily life, his wrath a looming threat. The hymn reveals his oversight. From thence perceiving he beholds all wondrous things, both what hath been and what hereafter will be done. No explicit nooses here, but his all-seeing gaze is the snare catching every trespass against RTA. Other hymns flesh this out. They from whom Varuna the king and Soma and all the deities drink strength and vigor, they into whom Vaisvanara Agni entered, here let those waters, goddesses, protect me. His presence empowers the divine assembly, a sovereign force within the sacred waters, a relentless watch that binds the cosmos to his law. The Rigvedic hymns linger on this severity with dread and reverence. Release us from the upper bond, untie the bond between, and loose the bonds below, that I may live. This is how this hymn 25 cries, imagining RTA's law as literal chords, upper sky, middle earth, lower depths, binding the guilty. Elsewhere in the Rigveda, free us from sins committed by our fathers, from those wherein we have ourselves offended. He's a god of generational accountability, his ledger spanning lifetimes. Sins don't fade, they tighten. Another plea, like Varuna from heaven, he sinks in Sindhu, like a white shining spark, a strong wild creature. A shift from petition to awe, yet the terror remains palpable. Poets glancing skyward, fearing a careless word might summon his invisible grip. Unlike Nut's protective embrace or Ahura Mazda's ethical radiance, Varuna offers no warmth, only the stark clarity of consequence, a sky that doesn't cradle but corrects, its law as cold as the wind he commands. Yet this sternness has a shadow side, mercy woven into his sovereignty like a hidden seam. Varuna, hear this call of mine. Be gracious unto us this day. Longing for help I cried to thee, pleads the Rigveda, seeking reprieve from the judge. This duality shines elsewhere in the Rigveda. Move far from me what sins I have committed. Let me not suffer, king, for guilt of others. What, Varuna, hath been my chief transgression, that thou wouldst slay the friend who sings thy praises? Tell me, unconquerable Lord, and quickly sinless will I approach thee with mine homage. The poets probe and plead, appealing to his authority not merely to escape wrath, but to understand and realign with the harmony he guards. His gaze, though piercing, doubles as a beacon, a call to sync with RTA's rhythm rather than stumble against its beat. It's a dynamic dance. Varuna as jailer and liberator, his law a whip and a lifeline. His celestial throne anchors this authority, rooted in the night sky alongside Mitra. Varuna cut a pathway out for Surya and led the watery floods of rivers onward. A quote we previously mentioned suggests a cosmic stage where sun and waters obey his will, though the hymns don't explicitly seat him with Mitra here. Scholars infer a pairing, Mitra's daylight to Varuna's shadow, an Indo-European echo, and the contrast looms. Varuna cloaked in darkness, his dominion the starry vault. And now, as we move from the Rig Veda to Atharva Veda Samhita, both this earth is King Varuna's, and yonder great sky with distant margins. Also the two oceans are Varuna's paunches. Also in this petty water is he hidden. This passage from Atharva Veda Samhita, Book 4, Hymn 16, casts Varuna as omnipresent from sky to sea to smallest drop. It's a haunting vision, his rule not just lofty but pervasive, a cosmic watch threading through every realm. This nocturnal reign drapes Varuna in mystery. Far from me, Varuna, remove all danger, accept me graciously, thou holy sovereign. As Rig Veda 2:28.6 declares, it whispers a plea into the shadows, where his power hums unseen. Unlike Ahura Mazda's dawn-lit clarity, Varuna thrives in the dark, his might swelling when the world sleeps. The wind, thy breath, hath sounded through the region like a wild beast that seeks his food in pastures. Later states Rig Veda, evoking a subtle, feral force, Varuna's authority being a rustle felt in the stillness between breaths. The Vedic cosmos pulses under his eye, rivers racing by his decree. He made them flow, the Aditya, the sustainer, the rivers run by Varuna's commandment. Stars glinting as silent sentinels, Arta a taut chord he strums. Varuna's prominence in the Rig Veda is striking. Over a dozen hymns exalt him, second only to Indra. Hymn 25 wrestles with his reach. Yearning for the wide-seeing one, my thoughts move onward unto him, as kine unto their pastures move. Others delve deeper. With mine own heart, I commune on the question how Varuna and I may be united, as it is written in Rig Veda, Book 7, Hymn 86. Then in Hymn 87, on him three heavens rest and are supported, and the three earths are there in sixfold order. Varuna's hymns are urgent, soul-searching, a dialogue of awe and unease. This weight marks him a theological colossus, his RTA rivaling Anu's delegated order or Ahura Mazda's ethical light. Yet Varuna's arc bends towards eclipse. As Vedic religion shifts into the Brahmanas and Upanishads, c. 1500 BCE, his star dims. Indra's thunderous heroics and Vishnu's cosmic strides take center stage while Varuna recedes, not cast off like Ouranos to Homeric irrelevance, but edged aside. The gods turn to Indra for victory, to Vishnu for salvation, leaving Varuna to his rivers and his stars, one might quip, picturing priests shrugging as they swapped cosmic oversight for flashier tales. The Shatapatha Brahmana nods to him faintly, his order seeping into Satya, truth. By the Mahabharata, c. 400 BCE 400 CE, he's an ugly sea god, a lord of waters, dwelling in his palace beneath the waves. What dimmed his light? The shift might mirror cultural tides. Indra's battles and Vishnu's avatars spin vivid dramas, gods who clash and walk among men. Varuna, with his silent law and piercing watch, feels distant, his grandeur too stern for a world craving action. Who prays to a judge when you can cheer a warrior? A Vedic bard might mutter, tossing hymns for war cries. Perhaps RTA's vast scope, mentioned in Rig Veda January 25th at 12, may that Aditya, very wise, make fair paths for us all our days. Melted into Dharma, a broader weave for India's tangled web. His bonds release us from the upper bond, soften into karmic strands, his stars into fate's markers. This decline isn't obliteration, his echo lingers in Hinduism. Avatar foreshadows Dharma's cosmic weave, threading gods, humans and nature. The Bhagavad Gita's ethical call, Krishna urging Arjuna to duty, mirrors Varuna's alignment, sans fetters. His watery realm endures. He made them flow, the Aditya, the sustainer. Rigveda 2, 28.4, ripples in purification rites invoking Varuna of the waters. His sternness persists in Yama, tallying souls as Varuna once weighed sins. Varuna's Indo-European roots enrich his tale. His link to Mitra parallels Avestan Mithra, hinting at a shared archetype of covenant and truth. Varuna's fetters darken Mithra's harmony, but the weir thread binds him to Ouranos, coverer, perhaps Anu's authority. Did Vedic poets forge this judge? Thou, O wise God, art Lord of all, thou art the King of earth and heaven? Rigveda, January 25th, 20, while Iran softened it into Ahura Mazda's light. Varuna straddles the divide, less flesh than Ouranos, less abstract than Anu, less radiant than Ahura Mazda, yet kin to all. Comparatively, RTA matches Anu's Anutu, though Varuna wields it himself. His scrutiny, fain to know this is my sin, I question others, foreshadows Ahura Mazda's dualism, sans cosmic hope. He binds trespasses, not a lie. Against Nut he constrains where she cradles. Her stars are souls, his thousand-eyed spies. From the sky his spies go forth hither. Ouranos' brutal fall finds no echo. Varuna fades softly. He regulates where others create, nurture, or illuminate, a sky that balances, its law as silent as gravity. Varuna's hymns offer a lens. What, Varuna, hath been my chief transgression? Urta is star's rhythm, river's flow, heart's truth, whole until breached. His decline probes. Did his austerity estrange, or did RTA's breadth? The wise King Varuna hath made in heaven that golden swing to cover it with glory. Fade into Dharma's rise. His waters and night hint at transitions, dusk to dawn, shore to sea, yet his rigidity yielded to Vishnu's fluidity. Perhaps his watch grew too weighty for a culture turning to story over statute. So we stand beneath his legacy, a sky neither violated nor maternal, neither delegated nor radiant, but regulatory, a cosmos ticking under watchful stars. Varuna doesn't comfort or conquer, he observes, enforces, binds. When we trace constellations or feel a vow's heft, do we sense his eye? All this King Varuna beholds, they say, a relic of a stricter age or a shadow in our laws, natural, moral, karmic. Rivers run, stars gleam, perhaps Varuna lingers in the silence he always ruled. And so, the heavens roar their final silence, a thunderclap that shatters the firmament and leaves us trembling in its wake. We've torn through the skies, from Ouranos' primal wound to Nut's starlit womb, from Anu's vacant crown to Ahura Mazda's blazing truth, to Varuna's relentless chords. What remains? A cosmos unbound, a kaleidoscope, or a fractal of divinity that bleeds, cradles, commands, illuminates and binds, a mirror cracked into 1,000 faces, each reflecting a truth too fierce to tame. Hesiod's gore gave us a heaven that births through pain. Plato's purity veiled its lust. Homer's slight turned it to air. The Orphics sang it alive. Egypt wrapped it in care. Mesopotamia crowned it with law. Zoroaster set it aflame. Varuna wove it tight. This is no gentle hymn. It's an explosion of being, a clash of gods that leaves us raw, reeling, and irrevocably awake. We've danced on the edge of this abyss, and there's no turning back. Ouranos' severed flesh birthed love from violence, a paradox that haunts us still. Nut's embrace held a universe where death is rebirth. Anu's absence fueled an order that flows like a river. Ahura Mazda's light demanded our choice. Varuna's gaze, all this King Varuna beholds, tied us to RTA's unyielding thread, a gauntlet thrown at your feet, a dare to see the sky as a battlefield, a mother, a judge, a fire, a law, all at once. The heavens rupture, spilling their contradictions into your lap. The one is all things and no thing, Parmenides might whisper, and here it rings true. A unity that fractures, a void that screams, a sovereign that spares. But keep in mind that I dragged you through this tempest to forge you. These myths pulse in your blood, etched in the stardust you are. Ouranos' howl, Nut's whisper, Anu's decree, Ahura Mazda's gleam, Varuna's verdict. All of these are alive in your substance, clawing at the walls of your soul. This is your reckoning. The heavens are not above, they're within, a furnace where every myth you've met burns alive. From thence, perceiving, he beholds all wondrous things, Varuna declares, but now you behold them too. A legacy of struggle and splendor you can't dodge. We've hammered through these skies, tempered your spirit in their blaze, and now you hold the ember. The age of Aquarius floods us with this gnosis, a tide the timid dread. The heavens have roared, and their silence is your command. This is no farewell. The sky is no limit. It's a dare, a paradox, a pulse. What Varuna hath been my chief transgression? The poet cries, and the question is yours. The heavens watch, not with eyes, but with the weight of all they've been. Wounded, starry, empty, wise, binding. Step forth or stand still. But know this, the cosmos is yours to wrestle, and Irevelato is your blade. The storm has passed, the fire remains. Burn with it.